Well, we can get this over, right?
Yes.
All right, we have a quorum. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the October 23rd Hadley School Committee meeting. Motion to call the meeting to order. Motion?
I'll move to call the meeting to order.
Okay. Second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and we're off. Okay, let's see, first item on the agenda, we are not moving into executive session. There will not be an executive session tonight. We can update on the status of contracts a little bit later in the meeting. So the consent agenda, that would be for the approval of our minutes from the meeting of September 25th and the approval of warrants that were submitted in October 2017. Any questions about the consent agenda? Okay, can I get a motion?
Can we do them all in one?
Yeah.
Yep.
So I recommend to approve the minutes from the September 27, 2017 school committee meeting and as well the warrants submitted for October of 2017.
Just one minor correction, 25th. You said 27th. I think you meant 25th.
Oh, I meant 25th.
Yes.
Thank you.
I heard 25th.
So did I, yeah.
All right, and a second?
I'll second that.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any adjustments to the agenda tonight?
None?
None. Then we will move into presentations and discussion items. The first being the introduction of our special education coordinators.
So welcome to Pamela Haywood, who joined us today. It was her first day. She was appointed a couple of weeks ago now, after our interview process. And Ms. Haywood comes to us from Hamden-Wilbraham Regional School District. For about the past 9 years, she's worked in the position of an educational team chair in their special education department. And I will also let her say hello to the committee. Did you get a chance to meet Mr. Shannon? Keith
I did.
Shannon?
Hi.
Okay.
Nice to meet you.
Perfect. All right.
Well, thank you. I'm really excited to be here in Hadley. Like Annie said, I worked in Wilbraham for 9 years as an educational team leader, and prior to that, I was a school adjustment counselor. And then prior to coming into the school system, I was a clinical social worker, so I had worked in a private practice as well as in a court clinic setting in the district courts out in the eastern part of the state. So have some social work clinical background, and then moved into education and then special education. So super happy to be here and getting to know Hadley and the staff and the families. And it's been very warm welcomes all day. So
Welcome. Today was your first day?
today was my first day.
Welcome from all of us.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here.
Thanks.
Is there anybody have any questions or anything, and you don't feel like you have to? Okay.
I'm glad it all worked out. I'm glad we found you so
Yes.
quickly, all aligned, and it's all very positive and exciting.
No one's more excited than Pat. Counting the days for Pat's arrival.
She looks lighter today.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
She can't go anywhere yet though.
We look forward to working with you and hearing from you, and we hope that we see you at future school committee meetings to be able to keep up to date with progress and activities.
All right, great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And certainly don't feel that you're being rude if you decide to exit at any time and go home. That's perfectly fine.
Okay, moving on, Hertzberg Academy approval.
Yes, so in the school committee packet, you will see the documentation that is a part of the annual approval process. Hertzberg is a private school offering local education in Hadley. School committee has a policy that annually I visit, review all of their documents, speak with their administrative chair, is what they have there. So I can tell the school committee, as you can see on the first page, that I have conducted the visit, I've reviewed the documents, and there are some notes on the following pages of the checklist indicating that all of the criteria in your school committee policy, ensuring that the school has a stated mission, objectives, educational philosophy, they adhere to that, documentation around physical and plant safety, their curriculum, their materials, that they have adequate staffing, administration with sufficient authority, they abide by good record-keeping policies and practices, and that they have, their finances indicate that they are in a position to, they're in a sound financial position. So I reviewed those documents, and then it's required that the school committee votes on its approval for their continued operations, and we notify them of your vote. There are, if you're curious, about 261 students that attend this school in kindergarten through 12. 12 of those students are Hadley residents.
I mean, based on the report, it seems like all the criteria are met, and you've done the visit. Unless there's any reservations that you have or other comments, I'm in support of its approval.
Me as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so we'll take a vote. Does this need to be individual?
No, it's not
individually
roll call.
captured?
No,
Okay.
no, just a regular vote.
Can I get a motion to approve?
I move to approve the Hertzberg private school.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion's approved. Okay, next is the Hadley Elementary School Principal Search Survey and Timeline.
Yep. So this has been, the timeline is in your packet, it's been updated slightly. The consultant who will be assisting us is Bill Erickson. He works for the Collaborative for Educational Services. He also assisted the school committee with previous searches. I think their Hopkins Academy principal search, I
Yep.
believe he assisted with. Yes, I think that's one he assisted with. So what he has recommended, and the Hadley Elementary School Council met last Monday.
Yep.
They reviewed the timeline, they reviewed the survey questions, they gave really good feedback. We revised the survey questions based on their feedback. We're looking at a committee of approximately 3 teachers, about a 10-member committee, 3 teachers, 2 staff members, so that would be like admin assistant or educational support professional, 1 administrative position, that would not be Joan, it would not be me in the first round, Pat or Pam or Brian, 3 parent representatives, and we already have 2 members of the Hadley Elementary School Council that have indicated their interest, and 1 school committee representative. Certainly you could indicate who's interested in that process or give me some feedback. The important part would be that this would be something that would be a superintendent appointment, and that's around the whole open meeting piece. When the school committee appoints a person as a representative liaison or subcommittee member, then everything having to do with open meeting goes into effect, and if something happened and the school committee member couldn't be there, we'd have to cancel. So I was looking for feedback, and also just to give people a sense of what this timeline looks like. So the council has already reviewed the community survey and given us feedback. And reviewed and recommended, weighed in on the composition and size of the screening and interview panel. We are looking for the school committee to take a look at that timeline and also any feedback on survey questions. Then I would be looking, once the school committee was comfortable with the survey, to post the survey, keep the survey window open for a minimum of 2 weeks, maybe slightly longer than that, and ensuring that we make sure we have everybody named on the interview screening committee. If we need to make any adjustments to the job description, we would bring those before the school committee in December, at your December meeting, and we'll be advertising the position in December. That committee would meet with a consultant to review survey results, to review and look at that approved job description, and develop a preliminary outline of interview questions and topics. Hi, Nara. And then once the posting closes, the consultant would assist the screening and interview committee with the paper screening of applications, selecting applicants to be interviewed. That doesn't mean, that was trying to give people a sense of about when we'd be looking to make that selection. That's probably a single meeting, maybe 2 meetings, but what folks on the interview committee would need to know is that they have to be available for all dates or they can't
Right.
participate. So we're trying to give people a sense of what those might be. That group, with the help of the consultant, would finalize the interview format and questions, set up the schedule. Again, this isn't written in stone, it's just to give people a rough idea of when, which would be in mid-January. The consultant would assist that screening and interview committee of reviewing results on the last day of interviews and deciding which candidates to recommend to the superintendent as finalists. That should be plural. And then the consultant would confirm with each of the candidates if he or she wished to continue and inform the superintendent of the recommended slate. All of this is completely confidential and private. So at this stage in the game, there's nothing public about who's applied. And then the superintendent, after I would meet with folks, begin finalist reference checks, schedule community Q&As with finalists, have personal meetings, and then make a selection for the next principal. So that's the proposed timeline, and again, the questions that school council have, I appreciate very much the work that your council did, Joan, to assist and weigh in on those questions.
Okay.
Sure.
Couple questions.
Of course.
Who, the survey itself, this is just going to proposed members?
No, so the survey would actually be posted on our website.
Uh-huh.
I would put it in the email blast. Now, what I won't be able to control for in using a SurveyMonkey, although I could be mistaken, you've done a lot of these for us. So I'm not worried that there's somebody out there who's crazed enough to want to take the survey 62 times just to make sure that their question gets asked. I mean, actually, if that person exists, they deserve to be rewarded for tenacity. And their question should be asked. So I'm trusting.
You want it to be HES parents?
Well, it'll be on the website, and other people can also weigh in on
Okay.
it. There's nothing that says you can be an HA parent, a community member.
Okay.
That's why we ask, kind of, who are you?
Yeah.
Just to
Got
get a
it.
sense of who's responding.
Yeah.
But we're not trying to limit the input. So it would be on our website. I would remind people in the weekly email, remind them in a separate School Brains blast to please fill out the survey. And we tried to make the survey manageable.
Okay. And then I saw there were closed session interviews. Are there open interviews that would be recorded?
The Q&A with finalists, I'll try to work that out with Hadley Media to see that they could be there. Those would be public, so they would be
Okay.
public and folks would be invited to those.
Got it, with the finalists, okay.
Mhm.
And I understand there'll be one school committee representative, but is there any, and maybe this is not necessary, I forget if this has been part of the past
Mhm.
searches, but is there any meeting with the full school committee?
Although you did do that once in the past for a principal search, technically, that's somewhat of a slippery slope because the principal appointment is not a school committee appointment. So the
Right.
school committee should participate as a representative in interview screening, but also in those community forums, as
Okay.
they should participate in their role as school committee, as parents, and identify themselves as such, right, when they're asking questions of the candidates. But a principal is not a school committee interview.
Yeah. Okay. Well, as far as the one school committee representative and somebody getting to you, I would only recommend that somebody with children in HES pursue that, so I'm going to take myself out of the nomination. I would look to either one of you, or if Humira, you're interested,
Well,
any of you guys.
I really appreciated and I enjoyed the process of selecting our great interim principal.
Yes, Humira did help us with that. Thank you.
It gave us great insight into the process, and if I have a sense of what the time frame is, and I know now what my time frame is in terms of like being able to make the interviews, I would love to participate on that.
So Annie, is that something you need tonight as to who the representative
No,
is?
I don't
or
need
just
tonight.
they can
You
reach out
can
to you?
certainly, they can, absolutely, folks can reach out to me and I can, yeah, I don't need that tonight.
Okay.
but-
Yeah, just a question for those days that are laid out here. Is that like open availability at any point during that day? You don't know, like, is there any idea of like time of day of these interviews or anything like that, or?
So they would be, most likely, we're looking at the afternoon, we have council, parents, we have, so, yeah, late afternoon, early evening.
So I have a couple questions.
Sure.
I just, simply because I don't know. Have we, the consultant that we're using, is that something we've standardly done in the past, or is that just to have an objective person looking at a formal process? What's the point of the consultant on hand?
So the consultant, this district has, and many districts do,
Mhm.
to varying degrees. So even when they were hiring for a superintendent, they
Mhm.
used some of the services of Mass Association of School Committees. When they appointed their high school principal, they utilized Bill Erickson, the Collaborative for Educational Services. Just as an aside, the benefit of the Collaborative for Educational Services is that as members, they're not charging us for any of this work. What the consultant does, since I'm not in the first one,
Mhm.
I'm at the finalist stage, is the consultant helps the folks on the interview committee to, I think, one, it helps them, they've done this work before, so it keeps the process on track.
Guidance. Sure.
And it also doesn't force anybody, I think by default, there's a chance that if the consultant isn't there, the school committee rep somehow becomes expected to be in charge of a process. It's helpful to just let everybody just be a member of the team and just have equal input.
Absolutely.
And they also have a sense, since they help with so many searches, of small things, questions that aren't clear in terms of interview, things you may want to ask, just small details that they can help with. It's things as simple as, how are we going to time this in such a way that people are greeted? If it's supposed to be a confidential process, you don't want your candidates passing each other.
Right.
Yeah.
And then my only other question is, well, first of all, I think it's great to ask
Mhm.
members of the community, parents,
Mhm.
educational staff, all these different people, their thoughts and opinions. Have we ever done that in the past? Or is that something new? Have you ever reached out to survey?
Yeah, we've had pretty comprehensive processes. At the time that we selected Brian Beck, we didn't actually have a superintendent, we had an interim superintendent. And so we utilized the services of a consultant, and actually in that situation, we also had a school committee sort of interview of the final candidates. But that person played a really key sort of neutral role, sort of knowing the cycles of like when principals are hired and what some of the key issues are, and helps translates that to fellow, for parents and committee members. So yeah, we've done that before and it's worked out well, and I would highly recommend it.
I love that we're asking for input from
Yeah.
Yeah.
everybody prior to, even going out, looking at people they're really concerned and interested in.
And the consultant looked over the questions first. So
Yeah.
I reached out also to Mass Association of School Committees. I asked Glenn Kuchar, can you please provide me with some survey questions to get community input and parent input or all kinds of input for a principal search. Glenn gave me some questions. I put those in SurveyMonkey. Bill Erickson looked at them. He had input. Then school council looked at them. They had additional input. And this is what's in front of you now.
Well, I myself have an interest as well if it doesn't work out for you, or if, between the, sounds like three
Yeah.
of us, somebody should be able to do it.
Yeah, perfect.
Great. So do you need approval on the survey now from us?
I don't need a vote for that. I was just looking for your input. If you're comfortable with it, if there's something you'd like me to change, just let me know. And if you'd like me to wait a couple of days and you want to give me individual input on something, I'm happy to do that too.
The only input I had was on question number 2, and then you mentioned it's beyond just Hadley Elementary. Do you care if somebody has children attending Hadley schools but not in HES? Because that could be an option, saying,
Oh, yeah. That's good.
yes,
Thank you.
Hopkins.
Oh, yeah, that's a good,
Yeah.
It's just not an option.
And then once you receive the surveys and all the data is compiled, there's a decent amount of open-ended survey questions that you're asking. How does that all shake out? How would those be weighed with like the 3 questions that you want to make sure everybody asks? Is it like, tally marks, like this question, like more people said this than this, so we're gonna make sure we ask that question?
So this is a really good point, and actually the Hadley Elementary School Council pointed out like the bugaboo around these open-ended questions. So it was good feedback, and one of their suggestions was, well, perhaps you want to give people some selections. The struggle I had with that was, so for example, characteristics that you'd like to see in a principal. One, I couldn't, all the ones I was thinking of, like ethical, visionary, I'm thinking, who's gonna say, well, we don't want that. And also I was afraid that it was too much of, I'm not gonna see what I don't see. Of course, we could have had another option, but I just felt like it was just too much of me then coming through in the design of the question. I think, I mean, honestly, Heather, you might be able to help me answer that in terms of doing the community survey when you have open-ended questions. My vision is that the interview team, with the help of the consultant, does do an analysis of like words or phrases that come up with a certain amount of frequency.
We did that through SurveyMonkey, and then kind of came up with the themes.
Right.
Which I don't know, is Bill Erickson in his role, do they have some resources that could support this too?
Sure, the collaborative would help us with that too, I'm
That would be
certain.
great.
Rather
Yeah.
than, somebody hunting and packing through it.
I love how open-ended it is.
Yeah.
Like, as like as a parent, I love it, but then thinking of the back end of getting all that data, it's like, wow, what do we do now? So.
CES does have those resources, and I'm sure they would help us with that.
Well, I hope we're in that situation where we have a lot of data to go
Yes.
through.
Yeah.
Because more is better. Okay, great. Well, it sounds like we're gonna go back to you on interest. You've got 3 people interested. You guys can arm wrestle over that, and we'll get back to you if there have any other suggestions on the survey.
Perfect. All right. I will hold off, and I'll send an email to the school committee before I say I'm really ready to have this go live. So 3, 2, 1, if you have something to tell me, but I'll give it a couple of days.
Okay. All right, moving to 2017 MCAS data.
Yes. So what you have in your packet, and I want to tell any parents who are watching that I don't have a slideshow set up. I'm not walking people through slides. As I've put in several emails, if parents have any questions, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has very good resources. So www.doe.mass.edu. If you go there and go under assessment and accountability, you can easily find MCAS as an option, and there are many, many resources that parents can look at, and also parents can see everything that we can see. They can't see individual private student data, but in terms of MCAS resources, test items that they've released, all of these things, and these slides in their entirety. So I just took out some of the critical slides that hit some key points, are all available for parents. One of the things that I do want to draw your attention to is that across the valley, across the Commonwealth, students, it would appear that many students in some cases did not do as well as they'd done previously. So parent reports will be delivered to us from the department on the 26th, and then they'll go out shortly thereafter, or the 26th or tomorrow. I'm saying the 26th, I want to say the 26th, they come, Thursday.
Sounds familiar.
And they'll go out to parents shortly thereafter. Some parents may open the reports and say, oh my goodness, how is it that my child was proficient last year and this year appears to be only partially meeting expectations? So a few things have happened. One, as the department says in its own information, that it describes the expectations as more rigorous than they have been in the past. The projected results statewide across all grades and subjects is about 50% of students exceeding or meeting expectations. And the projections that the state had, and there is a slide in your handouts and parents could see it if they looked at the resources on the slide sheets, page 4, and the slide marked number 7 shows the state projection. So essentially, it's roughly 8 or 9% exceeding expectations, about 41 to 42% meeting, and then that same 41 to 42 partially meeting and 8 to 9 not meeting were the projections that the state had. If you compare those projections with performance on legacy MCAS, which is what they're calling what MCAS was in grades 3 through 8. Grade 10 still has legacy MCAS, which is a slide that's marked 11, it's on page 6. You can see in some grades where previously about 80%, so for example, grade 8 ELA, about 80% of students were advanced proficient. If the projection now is that's at 50%, yes, there will be students who look like their performance has gone down. The state has underscored that parents should not be alarmed by that. This is a baseline year, the expectations are more rigorous, and it is the expectation because the scores, all of those projections look like the same distribution in every single grade, and because those scores tie so closely to the National Assessment for Educational Progress, the NAEP scores. Some people have asked, well, will it always be that? Is this kind of like a distribution that will always exist? No, the state has said that their expectation is that an increasing percentage of students will be meeting or exceeding expectations. The connection with NAEP helps us to answer the question, how is it that Massachusetts can be number 1 in the country and only 50% of the students can be meeting or exceeding expectations? Well, if you look at Massachusetts, is one of the measures we use to come to that conclusion that Massachusetts is number 1 in education, are NAEP, or National Assessment of Educational Progress results. And Massachusetts, about 50% of students are advanced or proficient in grade 4 reading, 54% in grade 4 math, 46% in grade 8 reading. So that still connects with NAEP results. So it's in the nation, our assessment is already perhaps, if not the most rigorous assessment, and now it's become more rigorous in the next generation MCAS. So what about our district results and what we are paying attention to? So you saw what the state projected, and then what I provided you with is what happened in each one of our grades, that stacked bar graph. So what happened in each one of our grades and where we were particularly pleased and where we're going to say we need to pay a little bit more attention and investigate issues, potential issues of curriculum alignment. I do not think that, I don't have any significant concerns around instructional effectiveness. I really think that if we're looking at anything, it's ensuring that our curriculum is well aligned, particularly to the frameworks that were established in 2011. So some positives in ELA in particular. So you notice in grade 5, we don't have any students who were not meeting expectations in ELA. So there was 0% there. The student growth percent, the average SGP or growth percentile for that grade was 50.5. So moderate growth is between 40 and 60. Anything above 60 is high. 80 and above is very high. In grade 7, we don't have all students, so we don't have any students who are not meeting. We do have students who are partially meeting, but we don't have any students who are not meeting expectations. And also the student growth percentile average was 61.5, so that's high growth for that grade, and we don't have any students who are not meeting. The grade 8 student growth percentile 1, notice that it's much closer to almost 70% of students who are meeting or exceeding expectations in English language arts in grade 8, and their student growth percentile was 53. And in grade 10, we have 94% of students, which is in a different document that's in here, or in the growth and achievement grid. We have 94% of our students who score proficient or advanced, and their SGP average was 78, so that's 2 points away from very high. So you notice in one of the documents in there, you see kind of a bubble graph, and the bubble is up in high growth and high achievement. So our grade 10 ELA students did particularly well. In mathematics, we look at the stacked bar graph. Again, really I have to say our grade 5 mathematics teachers, Jess Plord and Fred Ciaglo, way to go. And all the students, I mean, just way to go. Not only do you see about 62% at meeting or exceeding expectations in mathematics in grade 5, but their average student growth percentile was 80.5. So it's the highest in the district for average growth percentile. In grade 6. In grade 5, their SGP was 64, And so, but again, in grade 5, over 60% of students meeting or exceeding in mathematics. In grade 10, student growth percentile 62.5, with 80% of our students at proficient or advanced. Where we will be paying attention and taking a closer look. In mathematics, grade 3, grade 4, and grade 7. The resources that we will bring to bear on that is, I've been in conversation with somebody from Mount Holyoke College, someone who came highly recommended from Elaine Tudrin, our math coach. She's gone to professional development with Michael Flynn. And the PD that he would provide would be working with the teachers around instructional practices and looking at the curriculum. And then the nice thing is he does a lesson study model. So he coaches the teachers, and then he actually goes in, teaches their actual class, and they can observe him teaching and see the strategies in action. And also looking very closely at the grade 3 ELA curriculum, because those results were really concerning to us. Of course, this is also where we recommended an additional classroom as well in this, for these students. So that is what our MCAS results say. Again, there are things that we're pretty happy about and should be very happy about, and we know where we're going to take a more focused look. Great. Any questions?
This is kind of a silly one,
Yeah.
but I just want to make sure
Yep.
that I'm clear. When it says, you know, I'm looking at a bar for this year's, the 6th grade. Is it
ELA or
this year's-
mathematics? I'm
Either
sorry.
one, it doesn't matter.
Either one. No.
Is it this year's 6th grade or is it last year's 6th grade?
Tested in spring of 2017.
So if I look at the 5th grade, then I just want to be sure that's last year's 5th grade.
Correct. So this, when you look at this stack bar, 3rd grade, when I
Yeah.
said, okay, and remember we have they are now 4th graders.
Right, so that's.
This was last year's 3rd grade. So this is a test administered in spring of 2017.
Right. Okay.
When you say the standards are more rigorous, is that in like the difficulty of the testing? Is that in?
Yeah, so I want to make sure, because I keep saying that too, and I might have said standards. The state is clear, they say the expectations are more rigorous.
Right.
So the standards were adopted in 2011. I believe it's what they are actually asking students to do in terms of demonstrating mastery of those standards. So the kinds of open-ended questions, the kinds of tasks that they're being asked to do, the kinds of texts that they're being asked to analyze.
An
Yes,
example of that is previously students had to read a passage and then answer questions from factual to inference. Now they're asking them to read 2 passages and compare and make those kinds of inferences in factual. So it's the complexity of what they're asking the students is much more challenging.
Mhm.
So we have to shift our curriculum to have students be able to do those kind of tasks. They're capable of doing them, they just have not had the practice to do that kind of thing.
I have another question.
Yes.
Along those same lines, specifically around ELA. We added a 3rd class to this year's 4th graders.
Correct.
Implying that last year's English results could have been, like that could have been the one that needed the most help, according to this.
Yes, so you're looking at that class, so that could have been some of the issues that parents and the administration brought to the school committee to say, please make this investment.
Right.
That perhaps class size and composition could have been a contributing factor, but we won't assume that that was the deciding factor, which is why the careful analysis of the curriculum to make sure that we have really tight alignment.
Of course. But they would be the 3rd, the bar graph that says 3rd. Right?
Correct.
Okay, so this year's 5th graders are especially in need of ELA help.
This
That
year's
was-
4th graders, right? Or potentially 4th and 5th.
Right.
Yeah, so last year's 3rd and 4th, this year's 4th and 5th.
Right, just
If
wanted
it's
to-
yeah, and so the way we look at all of this is a question of student need. When you say in need of targeted, I'm going to say targeted assistance.
In the red.
Right.
I guess in the red.
In need of help.
Right.
So the good news is we don't have to wait for MCAS for that, because all of those now FAST, but previously DIBELS data that you see, the Title I data. So although we don't share student names at the school committee, you see that we have individual student data, we see where they are, in fall, in winter, and in spring. We don't have to wait for MCAS. If there are individual issues that may be creating impediments to reaching proficiency, the elementary school is already putting those resources in. They have tiered interventions, they have Elaine Tudrin, a lot of things going into the individual student. If class size and composition was a contributing factor for this one group, we would hope to see improvements this year because now we have 3 classrooms. And then the next level is to say, and let's look at the curriculum, let's look at the tasks that they're being assessed on in MCAS and the frequency with which similar tasks, they're doing similar tasks in the classroom.
Okay. Okay. Anything else on MCAS? Oh, look forward to seeing our kids' results
Yes.
next week.
And parents should know new performance levels that's in there, no longer advanced proficient except for in grade 10, needs improvement and failing. So you have exceeding expectations, meeting, partially meeting, and not meeting expectations. And the scale is different, 440 to 500, it's one of your slides there. 440 to 560.
560.
They did that on purpose. I can't tell you why. I mean, if people are really interested, I'd say call Heather. But she knows that stuff. But I think the primary reason was so people didn't try to compare it to last year's MCAS, and they even said that on one of the conference calls. This is completely different, so they didn't want them comparing scaled scores either.
I like the language change.
Yeah.
I think that's an improvement, just.
Of the category descriptors?
Well, yeah, the category descriptor saying you're proficient, just, or needs improvement, say, meeting expectations versus partially meeting just sounds more positive and encouraging and open and willing to help than, well, I'm proficient, or I need
yeah,
improvement,
failing.
Yeah,
or I'm-
failing.
yeah, or warning.
Yeah.
I just think the language is improvement.
Great, well, thank you. All right, district strategy and superintendent goals.
The strategy, again, that's a similar 3-year document. We had the superintendent goals, the school committee looked at them last time, and then we talked about perhaps voting them this evening if the committee was comfortable with them, if there's anything you'd like changed, and whatever you would like.
So although I wasn't here at the last meeting, was there any discussion around things that you'd like to see included in the goals from last time that, or revisions requested that you see here? Or any questions about what is included here in the goals?
I don't think we had much discussion about it at all.
No, I think we were at the end of what felt like an interminably long meeting. And when I said, you all may review them and I'll bring them back, everybody did a little happy dance, and that was where we left it, for good reason.
That sounds better.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
I know that these goals, the high-level chart and then the metrics that we will use to measure it came out of our offsite where we sort of
Correct.
took some time to think and come together as a school committee about what is it really we want to achieve and what are those 4 key indicators that we want to focus on for the next 2 to 3 years. And we talked about doing that again. Should that process define what we're approving of, or why do this now? if
Because
that's in it?
annually, so the district strategy, I haven't changed. We will convene in the summer and do exactly what you're describing for a new 3 to 5 year plan. But annually, I have to set goals with you so you can evaluate me in June
Okay,
on supporting the district strategy. So it's just for you to evaluate me.
okay.
And then my goal is to continue work that's underway, that the school committee has acknowledged as meaningful work. It's also informed by what's happening at the schools, and it's designed to tie directly back to the district strategy document.
Great, well, I would assert that if there's nothing that really stands out as being a challenge, and these metrics have been working, I like to see year-over-year progress, and this, having another year of these same indicators would give us at least 3 years to be able to see that progress. So I would suggest that if there's nothing in here that is, really in need of change, if we're missing the mark on evaluating something super important, that we may keep it the same so that we have 3 years worth of data to look at.
No, I mean, these goals seem to be reflective of not only connecting back to the district goals, but also taking into account the feedback that we shared a couple of meetings ago in terms of the superintendent review. So I think that makes a lot of sense and gives us some continuity, like you said, to look over time. I think that our retreat, so quote unquote, when we do our planning, we may want to do it more in the spring as opposed to the summer, just thinking about really taking some time to have that lead in before the school year starts. I'd hate to do it at the, right before the start of the school year. It'd be nice to have that in place as we come into another academic year.
Perfect.
So we need to approve the goals. Okay, is there a motion to approve the goals?
Motion to approve goals.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And we don't need to approve the district strategy because that's already approved.
But I will ask, so you also were provided a copy of Hadley Elementary School, so you see a bit more detail. What you should see is a through line from what the district says is important, and then the school strategy document should say, and this is what it looks like on the ground, the kinds of things that we're doing that support this work. And remember, those goals are also tied to educator evaluation, to the standards and indicators that you evaluate me on, that administrators are evaluated on. So Joan can speak a bit to the development of the elementary school strategy document. Substantively, it's not different. It tells you what Hadley Elementary School is doing to, Joan, do you want mine? I'm so sorry, I just put you on the spot. Do you have it?
I was looking for my copy,
Okay.
because my other one, you'd see me going like this on the screen. So as Annie said, all of these tie in to the overarching district goals. But under instructional leadership, we plan to work on that curriculum alignment, looking at our MCAS to make sure that, and we talk here about our science, that was also part of the MCAS, but now that the next generation science standards have been adopted by the state, we have purchased a new curriculum for K through 6, and so that is going to help us be aligned because everybody will be working from that curriculum, but making sure that everything ties in a cohesive manner. So that's some of the work that we'll be doing. We will be using our assessments again to try and not only look at individual data, but also class and grade level data. Compare that with our MCAS scores. We have a new assessment that we're piloting this year and hope to implement long term, but it's fast. We're only doing the reading component of it this year, but it actually has a whole suite of different assessments, math, social emotional, and it actually goes K through 12. So we're just piloting K through 4 in the reading, and hoping this assessment gives us good information but does it more quickly. That's one of the complaints that we have from our teachers, that we spend so much time assessing the students that it's cutting into our time to instruct and time on learning. So we're hoping that this assessment, which we found to be much, much quicker, and I think Pam has experience with it. She's probably a veteran. She can talk a little bit more to it. But that's one of the things that we're doing with regards to that. So that our kindergarten through 4th grade teachers are heavily invested in. We have monthly trainings for them. Annie and a team of leaders, we go through a special training to work with the teachers. So that has been really important. One of the things that 3rd and 4th grade, we're kind of tapped into our 5th and 6th grade teachers and said how we noticed that you've been able to have good outcomes with your students. And one of the tricks, or not tricks, but one of the curriculum things that they shared with us is we have, with our previous test MAP, but it can also be done with FAST. It ties into Khan Academy, and Khan Academy is like a tutorial, individualized tutorial for students. So you can take the scores and how they did on that assessment and tie it into this Khan Academy, which provides remedial instruction and practice examples tailored for the student. And it goes up or down depending on how they do. So if they don't do well on the test items that are given, it drops back to easier test items and easier concepts and starts building. If on the first 3 they do really well, then it jumps them up. So it's a nice tutorial that gives examples but constantly monitors where the students, and our 5th and 6th grade students, the teachers have been using that, and kids have been working on it even at home because it's all web-based. So they have their account and they can go in, and the teacher frequently will give them homework, do the next 10 problems in Khan Academy. And it's tailor-made. No 2 students are getting the same homework assignment, so it's really nice, or the same in-class assignment. So we'll be looking at using that more at the 3rd and 4th grade level, and that works for the ELA and the math. Under our management and operations, we're continuing with our PBIS program. Last year we really worked on our school-wide initiatives. This year we have a check-in and check-out interventions that we're going to be doing with students that we've identified that could use that support, to have a one-on-one adult checking in with them on a daily basis. So we've got that up and running now. And we are still using our MTSS tiered reading as we use the FAST to identify students who might need a double dose of the reading. We have our interventionalists and our support staff that are providing that second go-round with those kids. We're also continuing to use our Steps to Respect and Second Step. And this year, across all grades, we're getting training in responsive classroom. We had 4 staff members over the summer go out and get a week-long training, so they're kind of our in-house experts, but we have a professional development. Our November 9th, we'll be using that to do responsive classroom training for all the teachers, and that supplements our PBIS support. So that, family and community engagement, we met with our literacy teacher just last week and started to plan our family literacy night. We have parent-teacher conferences coming up this week. We've been trying to send out a few more communications to parents about our PBIS program. And this fall, we made our attendance available to parents, as well as we are hoping to get them involved in the screening process for the selection of the next principal. So really trying to get our parents involved on a variety of different levels.
And that was through the parent portal, so HES is using elements of the parent portal now around attendance and
Report cards are now
report cards.
accessible for them. So little by little, we're expanding that so parents have more access to student information. And last but not least, our professional culture. Once again, speaking about our fast screening days, a lot of training going on with regards to that. We still do our MAP testing in the fall, winter, and spring. We have a team of teachers that we pretty much talk about this every month at our faculty meeting, so everybody has an opportunity to weigh in. But we do have a PBIS team that kind of reviews how we're doing for Tier 1, Tier 2 interventions, as well as identifies different kinds of incentives that we can provide students to help them follow our expected behaviors in the various public areas, as well as classrooms. We use our data, and our data has been very compelling in terms of how this program has really helped reduce incidents of unexpected or inappropriate behaviors. It's stark to see where we were look at the data from 2 or 3 years ago, before this program or when this program was just starting, and now in terms of behavioral incidents that occur that either at a minor level or at a major level. Our bus behavior is off the charts, really good. As a matter of fact, we have so many ties every week that we've had to randomly select a bus every week to get a wing reward. That reward is getting off the bus first in the morning. But it's important to kids. That they work for that. But I think for the last 4 or 5 weeks, we've had like maybe 4 out of our 6 buses have had perfect behavior morning and afternoon runs for the entire week. So we've had to come up with a rotating basis to deliver this incentive for the kids. So we've had really excellent bus behavior.
When there's a tie, I'm happy to board the bus and do karaoke. Punishment, I think, for the driver, but I'm pretty sure that I could get a good sing-along going for the other bus that ties.
So
I'm happy to help. And we can bring at a future school committee meeting some of that data so you can see the impact of PBIS over time.
Thanks for going over that.
no problem.
And Hopkins is still in draft form. Brian will be working with his council and be talking about this next month.
Okay.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
In regards to the parent portal, have we gotten, are there any feedback, positive, negative, anything at all in regards to parents feeling comfortable utilizing it?
I think they're feeling comfortable. I mean, we only had a few little glitches where people were saying, I can't access my information, and Mr. Duffy was able to very, very quickly correct whatever the glitch was. But I don't know that we can see on our end how frequently it's used. Like sometimes you can tell how frequently parents go to either the attendance or the report cards, but I've not heard any negatives, so I'm assuming it's positive.
No, I haven't heard any negatives either. And I think one of the advantages is a lot of our parents, not all, but many have children at HA.
Right.
And that portal's been open for a couple of years now, so some parents are quite familiar with it.
Okay, so I think we've covered school improvement plan strategy documents as well. So we're moving to district professional development.
That was attached. I just want to bring to your attention that we do make every effort to connect PD activities with the strategic priorities. So many of these things Joan already spoke to. I talked about professional development in mathematics. She's talked about the assessments. And we have, this year, many teachers who have developed their own professional learning communities and projects where they're working together. So for example, we have a handful of teachers at Hopkins. One of the ways that they're getting required professional development points for relicensure, you need 15 professional development points in educating English language learners in order to gain licensure. They are taking the what are called can-do descriptors of when I show you access data of the levels that students are scoring at in their English language development. They're looking at their curriculum, they're looking at their assessments and saying, if I have a student who scores at level 4, what do I need to do to modify this mid-year exam, this final exam, so this student can demonstrate mastery? So we have a group of teachers working on that. We also have teachers from across the district participating in seminars with James Levine and Associates, with one of his psychologists coming in and doing workshops on trauma-informed instruction, and those will go through the month of May.
Okay. Moving on, NEASC accreditation site visit. They're here.
They are here. They are here. They arrived yesterday. Thank you very much. Humira and Heather were there. I don't know if you would like to comment on your experience at all.
Their comments were, their questions were very thoughtful, they were diverse, they asked about all kinds of different things from curriculum to use of technology to interdisciplinary approaches. We spoke as school committee members, we spoke as parents. I think they appreciated the perspective.
Yeah. I thought it was very helpful, I agree, their questions were insightful, and each one was listed to, or linked to a standard.
Right.
So it was helpful to understand what, framework they were working within when they asked a question. And we both had opportunity to come just prior to that meeting when the panel presentation was going on and heard some of the students presenting, and I have to say I was impressed. They just were very well-spoken, prepared, and very thoughtful comments and very professional in their presentation, which I'm sure can be daunting as a student. It was a podium set up with a table like a front committee like this with an audience of this MCAS panel of, is it 10 or 12 members? And administration, which is, as a student, could be, like, oh, but they did a great job.
A lot of people came out for a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good see
Thank you to our
parents.
staff.
Yep.
Parents and our staff. And that's a perfect segue. I'd like to echo what you said. So the students, all of our students have been helpful. They've been helpful today in terms of the committee members shadow students. They sit through classes, they look at instruction, they talk with students. But I would particularly like to thank Ben Anderson, Miranda Pitta, Aiden Cullen, and John Soto Guzman for excellent presentations. And to your point, that is a very, very daunting task. This is extremely important and a high-stakes evaluation when people come in and evaluate your school for accreditation. So I told John Soto Guzman that I was going to do this for his family, so talk about feeling like a daunting task, and then I would tell him where it was so he could show his parents on the school committee video. So for everyone, estoy muy orgullosa de todos nuestros estudiantes, especialmente de cómo Miranda Pitta, Ben Anderson, Aiden Cullen, y Juan Soto Guzman representaron Hopkins. Juan, tus palabras eran inteligentes y mostraron nuestra escuela en una manera positiva. Estamos afortunados que tú y tu familia vivan en nuestra comunidad. Muchas gracias.
Nice.
I'm going to thank the jazz band too, because they were there. And
Thank you. You can do that in English.
Yes, Signora would not be happy with my attempts to say that, but no, it was a nice
Yes,
atmosphere
they did a
during the
great
reception
job.
to have the jazz band playing, and then the students were instructed to go get a cookie and co-mingle and then come back and play. So that was a lot of fun.
They were fantastic.
Okay, and so they're here through Wednesday?
Yes. And then we can
Full schedule.
expect a draft report probably around January, and Brian, the faculty, and I will have a chance to review the draft report, correct any factual inaccuracies, and then we'll get, the process is a 5-year, it's a 10-year cycle, there's a 5-year kind of mid-year check-in, it's not a visit. We'll probably get some requests for special progress reports along the way too.
So I have a question. We were asked yesterday towards the end for why they were invited a year before accreditation was actually due. What was our theory behind it? And we had a theory. We had to come up with one. We had one. But maybe you know the actual.
Sure. Well, I think there are many reasons, and one is that, as you see when we do these documents around district strategy and district planning, there comes a point, I think, where you simply just want the visit and the feedback, and you want to move beyond preparation, because those reports will then, yes, they will then direct us when you get those special progress reports of how we want to allocate resources in terms of budgeting, in terms of professional development. So you just want to move past, you prepare for the wedding, and like, that's it. I don't care who it is. I just want to marry somebody now. I just don't want to plan anymore.
That's
And
exactly
so-
what we said to them. We said we're a district that prides ourselves on continuous improvement,
Mhm.
and having such a broad array of perspectives come from throughout New England to assess and help us understand where we need to get
Mhm.
better is something that we would love. And so that was our answer.
And to fold this into the earlier discussion about the retreat down the street for
Mhm.
our district planning, this would be very, I think,
Yes.
an incremental document
Absolutely.
for us to be looking at this
Absolutely.
report in terms of how that shapes then the future district plans.
Absolutely. Yep. Great.
All right, well, I guess we passed that test.
Good
Okay.
job.
Additional information on charter funding formula.
So I went a little hog wild. So the response. It was, as it says, designed to help you answer a few questions, and
Bye-bye, good night.
perhaps, thank you.
Sorry.
Help you answer a few questions in terms of drafting, if the school committee would like to draft a public comment. So the first part is designed to explain the charter formula. For me, the big takeaway there is, and this isn't about any one particular charter school, but when you look at how the formula is designed, declining enrollment because it takes foundation rate and then that percentage, actual net school spending as a percentage above foundation rate, that when your foundation enrollment declines, that's not, foundation enrollment isn't all the students here. Foundation enrollment are the people who live in Hadley, for whom Hadley is fiscally responsible, whether they're at Smith Voc, a charter school, choicing out, they still show up as your fiscal responsibility, or attending here. When that foundation enrollment declines, and that is really, that isn't about school choice. That's a question, and I've mentioned this to the town. We have to look at school choice, but there's also this question of why is it that people with young children either are moving out or not moving in? Because that foundation enrollment is gone way down. And I know it's true regionally, but it's going way down. So when that foundation enrollment goes down because many expenses, there's not a one-to-one correlation. You've heard me say this before. A child leaves, I don't say, on that note, we'll flip off that light switch. That it doesn't work that way. And so out of a sense of financial responsibility and moral obligation, the town does the right thing, which is steps in and fills the gap with Chapter 70, which drives that percentage up, right? So the unintended consequences is traditional school districts, as foundation enrollment goes down, they suffer under all these expenses, and charter schools get this unintended benefit. As foundation enrollment goes down, the percentage of ANS actual net school spending above foundation goes up, so they're not affected at all. It's just not really fair in the formula. Also, you noticed some of the big issues. I will say Amherst, there was a public records request filed by a neighboring school committee to Chinese Immersion Charter School, and they received copies of documents that the state had given to Chinese Immersion Charter School after when their last request for expansion was denied. Some of the criteria listed there included the fact that they were not doing a satisfactory job around retaining students who are considered high needs. The last 3 charts that are provided in the report show you that the attrition rates for students with disabilities, so to the conversation last time, they cannot, no public school can say, you have a disability, you can't come here. But it is a little alarming when you look at attrition rates. So an attrition rate means that they didn't come back. It's not necessarily within one year. They could have stayed an entire year, didn't come back the next year, or they could have left mid-year. So the attrition rates are really concerning. They're in the 3rd quartile of attrition for students with disabilities. Now this is a marker that you don't want to be in the 3rd quartile. It's not a test score. You want to be at the bottom. You want it low. Students who qualify as low income and English language learners.
Thank you very much for assembling this information.
Sure.
Tell me our charge in terms of, this is helpful in us understanding when we talk about school choice and we take a position on the expansion question, the cap on charters, which we have. But is there at this point, an active position statement that we're being asked to make?
You're not. So you have the option, the school committee, the deadline for public comment is December 15th. If the school committee would like to draft something and then discuss it publicly at your November meeting, you're well within your time frame to get it in for December 15th. I just wanted to make sure that you had some data that would assist you in that formulation. And before I forget, I also want to let the school committee know that the executive director of Pioneer Valley Chinese Immersion Charter School did schedule a meeting with David Nixon, the town administrator. David Nixon invited me. I'm very grateful for that. Appreciate that from David. At that meeting, the executive director wanted to brainstorm a proposal that would involve essentially Hadley Elementary School students retaining membership in Hadley Elementary School, but educational services being contracted out to Chinese Immersion Charter School. Mr. Alcorn indicated that there was such an arrangement that existed between Phoenix Academy Charter School in Lawrence and Lawrence Public Schools. I have since spoken with the state director of charter schools. The arrangement that exists between Phoenix and Lawrence is not between the charter school. Charter schools are legally prohibited from doing something like that. It is actually the foundation that is an approved turnaround operator. Lawrence is in receivership, and it's a level 5 elementary school. Maybe they're not in receivership. They definitely have a level 5 elementary school. There's a turnaround operator in this particular school, I should say. So that's the only way in which a charter school foundation could do that. A charter school itself is legally prohibited from acting as a turnaround operator, and there are statutory prohibitions on the kinds of services that they can provide on a fee basis to public schools. David Nixon and I will schedule another meeting with Mr. Alcorn, and I will walk him through everything that I received from the state.
So this has come up in the last couple of months, and we talked about whether we should, as a committee, take a position, and we've asked Annie to help us analyze what the impact would be. And over the last couple of months, you've brought us some great data. I think we're in a very unique role in that this specific charter school, the Chinese Immersion Charter School, happens to be situated in Hadley, making it very easy for Hadley parents to utilize its services. And looking at the data over the last, since its formation, I think over 30 some odd students, 34 perhaps.
32 projected in FY18.
Switched to the Chinese Immersion School. It stands to reason that doubling the enrollment could enable yet another 32.
It couldn't, just to point out for you, on the second page of that report, there is something in statute that the cap, when you look at what we're charged, there's this NSS cap that says 9%. Your total payment to all charter schools, as a town actually, because it comes off the town side payment to charter schools, which they charge back to us in the actual net school spending, as they should, your total payment to charter schools cannot exceed 9% of, you can't exceed that of your total expenses of all
9%
payments.
of our overall budget.
Correct.
And
And so you see how they come up, if you look at the second page of the report, they look at your net school spending, not the budget that you approve, what net school spending is, which includes, it includes things that the town charges us for, and it does not include things like food services, capital, and transportation. So based on that 9% cap, which applies to us, if you're in the lowest 10% of performing schools, if you're in the lowest 10%, that cap goes to 18%. But for us, it's at 9. And because of that cap, essentially 12 more students could enroll. So the enrollment wouldn't double. Although I still think that these issues around the formula, if you notice, I also pointed out that the reimbursement formula is subject to appropriation, and there are charts in there that show you that what Hadley has been owed under that formula since FY14, that you've been owed the town has been owed $456,000 roughly, and received $254,000. It has never been fully funded. So those issues continue to exist, even though another 32 students couldn't leave conceivably because of the cap. The issues around attrition, and that's personally, I'll just say that's rather concerning for me. That those issues around attrition and how the formula is designed, I think, are really are pretty problematic. Amherst, and I included that as one of your appendices. You got the school committee meeting minutes. The town has something, an article that is a lot shorter, and just in general, it's my understanding that the town article, and I don't have it in front of me, is to essentially vote to kind of put a halt on all expansion of all charters until the funding formula can be revisited and reevaluated, and issues of equity and impact can be kind of analyzed a little better.
Looks like they've got that draft warrant in the minutes, right?
The warrant, this is what the school committee said, in this
Yeah.
degree of detail, what's going before the town does not mention a specific charter school's data.
Got it.
This is a public record, it's in their minutes.
Yep.
But the town is seeing just a more general statement. The town isn't voting on all of their whereases.
So when you mentioned the December 15th deadline, can you clarify for me, that's a deadline for?
If
what?
anybody wants to submit public comment, that's when it's due.
Public comment, and this would be for,
On the
Yeah.
expansion, the proposed expansion specifically. It's not a general discussion, you would be speaking to this proposed expansion.
In the form of a letter that goes to the state.
Board of Elementary and Secondary Education.
Which would take a position on whether
Yeah.
we agree.
Yes, so the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education votes on the expansion, and they're due to vote that probably in January or February.
okay.
Yep.
And-
Well, I was gonna say, historically, when they've tried to expand, or even when it was going back to like the creation, is that something that the school committee has had a position on?
Well, the creation, the town supported, I don't want to get this wrong, but the select board wrote a letter of support in terms of
Well,
what, the creation?
Well, I do know that when they were first formed, they were in Amherst. They were located next to Kumon, which I used to bring my kids to. So it was in South Amherst by Pomeroy, like that area. So I imagine that the town of Hadley had very little choice or say in support, and I'm not sure that it would have weighed in at all. The opportunity came up when Kids Sports sold the building, and the Pioneer Valley Chinese Immersion School was growing and at capacity at their small location, and decided to purchase the building. So that's when it was new. It was considered like a sale, therefore it
Right.
net income to the town. So they would have been in support of it.
Would we have had to approve that?
No, what happens anytime, so now Hadley is closed to new charters. This is an expansion. It's closed because there's a cap on seats, of how many seats in a particular town can be available for charter schools. That has to do with demographics, enrollment, and performance. And the state determines how many charter schools there can be, where they can open, and how many seats can be available. The first time a charter is proposed, any potential sending district gets, when I forwarded you the amendment, an expansion proposal, every superintendent of a district, and the superintendent passes it along to the school committee. So at formation, it would have gone to the superintendent and then been passed along to the school committee. And that same public comment process, it goes for formation, goes for expansion. It's my understanding from the state that there's just about annual expansion requests. Of those annual requests, I think they had successfully had 2. Most recently, last year, they attempted this very same expansion request, and it was denied, and primarily around issues of serving high needs populations and retaining high needs populations.
And what's changed from their last application to this application?
Initially, nothing had changed. That was something else that they had originally submitted the exact same application, and it is my understanding that the state pointed that out to them, that that application had already been denied, and they had submitted the exact same application, so that they then did amend the application. We don't yet have a copy of that, although one of my colleagues has contacted the state and asked, why wouldn't we, if we get the amendments should flow through the superintendents to the school committees. So when that's available, I will pass it on to the school committee.
So I have a question about the gap between the total eligible reimbursement of $456,000 versus the actual reimbursement to Hadley of $253,000. So is that because the formula is flawed? Is that what you're?
No, that's because the reimbursement, the charter tuition formula exists, and then the reimbursement formula exists under a statute called Chapter 46 of Massachusetts General Laws. And as written, and it's not, you don't get reimbursed for total tuition, you get reimbursed for the increase in expense. It's over 6 fiscal years. In the first fiscal year, 100% of the increase, and then 25% of the increase in the 5 following fiscal years. As you can see, that's what the statutory reimbursement rate is, and then what has actually happened. Well, I think the best year was 2014, 100% of the increase, 25, but the other 3, maybe it was just, it didn't apply, but it's never been fully funded. It's subject to appropriation every single year. And you can see, like in 2016, where the eligible reimbursement for Hadley was about $74,000 and you got $4,000.
It's ridiculous.
So like many things that are subject to appropriation, regional transportation reimbursement doesn't apply to Hadley, you don't have regional transportation, but there are many, circuit breaker, subject to appropriation. Yeah, circuit breaker subject to appropriation. I do not believe that that has ever been fully funded as written. Pat was still here, she can correct me on that, but the percentage, not fully funded.
So the position of asking the state to fix the formula is one that directly benefits us regardless of how many.
Yeah, and I think to your point of like, would school districts have weighed in as much? Certainly if it's not in your neighborhood, maybe it doesn't get your attention, but I don't think anybody fully grasped the inequities that were inherent in the formula as when it was originally written. I mean, this idea of what would happen with declining enrollment, who's had a greater disadvantage when enrollments declined, and who gets this unintended benefit when enrollments decline. Also, just financial obligations. Charter schools do not pay retiree health care benefits. They don't have to. There's no place in statute to make that happen. So what does that mean? That means that they have no OPEB liability. So when we hear that talked about in the town, and that's part of, because we're all one town, and we're thinking, where do we allocate our resources and what are our obligations? Charter schools don't have that. It just feels incredibly inequitable.
So I guess the question for us is whether we want to draft a position statement, bring it to our next meeting for review, so that we can have it to the state by the December 15th deadline in terms of the proposed expansion. And, I mean, personally, I'm feeling like we could tie in and not make this a particular issue about this particular school, right? But more make it about the, and we did this, I think, we signed on to a prior letter that talked about the inequities in the funding formula. And that in particular, our smaller district with declining enrollment, that it's compounded here. And so while I'm not making it a personal attack on the Chinese immersion school, because I mean, I know we don't want to go that route, we could make it just a concern about expansion because of the effect that it would have on our district.
Right.
I can request that letter that you previously signed if you would like. That was drafted by the Collaborative for Educational Services. I think Mr. Deal was the one that got a number of people to sign it, if I remember correctly. I can double check
I
that.
believe we supported that.
Yeah, you
last year.
supported something that the Collaborative originally kind of took a position on.
Was that for the charter, the vote that we had last fall? I think that's what it was linked to.
Are they allowed to take a position in that way? I'm remembering that there was also a letter out east by a school district and a bunch of school districts that signed on to that. Maybe I'm mixing up my.
The Collaborative did one that was similar.
Was it?
And,
Okay.
and they certainly are allowed to
Yeah.
make public comment, actually, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So yes,
I can ask for a copy of that.
that would be great. And I'm in favor of putting something forward about a position.
So Amherst puts it in, so the Amherst School Committee, when we look here at their minutes, so they've submitted to the town and made the general statement to the town, and then the town goes and submits.
Excuse me, they decided that the town, this is unfortunate that I'm choking on air at the end of the meeting. The town has decided, that's very unique. That's the
Okay.
only time I've ever heard of it.
Okay.
We could
For us, it
use
would
some
be
of this
direct.
language. I mean, there's language about the formula, there's language about, you know, what we're pointing out as flaws.
Sure.
But this would be more of a statement to the state rather than a position being put in front of the town on the
Correct.
warrant.
Right.
like
As a
that.
school
Yes,
committee.
that is
Yeah,
correct.
exactly.
I'm in support as well.
Okay,
As am I.
great. I'm happy to work on that draft and then get it to you guys for the November meeting.
Great.
If that's
Thank you.
okay.
That's great.
That'd be perfect.
Thank you. All right. Student council update.
Yes,
Have a
thank you,
nice,
Sophie Berard,
Yep.
for providing the update about soccer senior nights, the Washington DC trip. Our students will be back tonight, thank you.
Tonight.
And our students will be back tonight. And Gender Equity Task Force, they had an Ally Day. We wore ribbons in support of gender equity, recognizing sexism. And next month or the month after, you can anticipate having Ms. Camuso come, perhaps with some students, to update you on some of that work and the status of the social norms campaign.
Great. All right, moving on to the personnel report.
So
Some
you see
new
new
hires.
hires, yep. And I believe we're still looking for a substitute ESP.
All right, any public comment?
Say something.
Hi, Connie. I miss you so much.
I know, I miss
We're glad to have you
I
here.
had to come here.
Okay, Chris, it's the Chris Show, business manager report.
Okay, as was last month, really not a lot to report with the budget, still looking good. We've made a couple of tweaks to some accounts as far as what we had encumbered. Electricity was one of them where we were over encumbered, and that made it look like we were really blowing the budget out of the water. I think I have one more adjustment to make on that as well, which I will take care of this month, but, you know, again, still looking good with this. Some additional information with the grants. We had the 262 grant awarded to us now, so we actually have a dollar amount there. I have not heard anything on the 274 or the 298. Have you yet? Anything
I have to
firm?
look at that tomorrow.
I
It's
did
prob-
email again and just to ask.
I'll double check it tomorrow and
Okay.
make sure we apply for it, if it's available.
And in no other districts that I work in have they heard either, so.
Oh,
Seems to
hallelujah,
be,
then I
yeah.
don't feel like I'm behind
No,
the eight ball.
yeah.
I knew that, and that's why it's not done yet.
Yeah. You know, last year we got 1,300 from the 298, and I think about 3,600 from the 274. So they're not huge grants, but nevertheless, you know, every dollar counts, so. One item of note that you'll just in case you hear about it, on Wednesday morning, the Hopkins Academy sign in the front by the road, it's hanging on a post. That's coming down to be refinished, so we timed it so that he's working on it Wednesday morning. We told him we didn't want an empty post up there for a long time. So Jeff is taking it down, bringing it down the road, and they're going to refinish it and then put it back up. But just in case you drive by and wonder what happened to that sign, now you know. It was all stained from the hardware that was holding it on. It was all rusty, and so that's being refinished, and then we'll use stainless steel hardware or something, so it won't happen again. So just an FYI. Also for the athletic fields, at this point in time, I guess what we need to do is we need to find somebody to draw up the specs for us, and, you know, the actual plans for the field, for the bidding process. We did one of these in East Hampton a few years back. The cost of putting all that together was $35,000. So that was for a football field. It may be more or less than that depending on, you know, we're not doing a football field here, but we're doing, you know, a larger area, I believe, than a football field. So hard to know about the cost, but I just wanted to mention that to you, that, you know, that is the dollar amount that we should expect at least. As
Do
Mm-hmm.
we
for,
already have that information? I'm thinking about Paul's, presented, specs in terms of the phase with broken out costs.
Yeah, those aren't bid specifications, so we need to put specifications together that actually allow people to bid on the job in the most accurate way possible. And putting those specs together is what, that kind of phasing and design and breaking it out,
Yep.
really important to letting people see how we're checking out the process, but not bid specifications. So we thank you to the town, thank you, thank you, thank you. Approved at special fall town meeting, $400,000. Our support groups are indicating to us that they look forward to supporting this project in some way, shape, or form. Thank you to all of them. Thank you to Helping Hearts. I know Stacy Mashinsky already has a meeting set up with a local business hoping to work with them to secure some support and funding for the project. And then it was clear in the vote that there's an expectation that the school department would expend some of its own funds first. And probably the most logical way to do that will be in paying to put the bid specs together. And so we will bring a school choice vote before you that if it was required to utilize school choice funds for that purpose, because it wouldn't be in the operating budget, that, and with a school choice balance for you before you vote that at the next meeting.
I have
No.
a question.
Oh, yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So there was a point made at
Mhm.
fall town meeting floor that really stuck with me,
Mhm.
and I don't have an answer for
Sure.
this, but I'm wondering if in parallel, in light of the fact that those fields were used for tobacco use and some of the chemicals that are potentially used on old
Mhm.
tobacco field land could be harmful.
Mhm.
And in fact, this was a situation in East Longmeadow or Longmeadow or
Mhm.
somewhere down
Mhm.
there where the entire school was shut down.
Yeah.
If in fact
I
that's the
forget what he
case.
mentioned.
But I think it probably makes sense on a parallel path to take a quick 2 or 3 soil samples and
Mhm.
send it off to
Perfect.
UMass
Great
Extension
idea.
Sure.
for their analysis
Before we
of the
get too far
field.
down the road.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Very
Just to
good.
be good stewards of the funding.
Can I ask you to?
Absolutely.
List.
And what I just wanted to clarify about the specs is, it's one thing to say, and I'm not trying to belittle the plans that were done, but, we'll put a soccer field here and a baseball field here. The specs call for X amount of inches of this type of dirt, and then this type of grass seed. I mean, that way everybody's bidding on the same exact, type of project. And, we could piece that together with this person that knows how much dirt to do and this person that says this is the best grass seed. But really, for a project of this size, you don't really want to piece together bid specs. You want somebody who does athletic fields to say this is what you need,
Mhm.
And that's really, what the specs are all about. It's not necessarily, coming up with just a list of items. It's the specific list, so everybody bids the same.
And if there's any dispute, which one hopes that there isn't, but in any construction project, if there's any dispute between the contractor, the people providing the service, and the people purchasing the service, the bid specs are gonna make or break how
Mhm.
that's interpreted, the quality of those specs.
Yeah, I could be misspeaking, but I believe that the East Hampton field included lights, scoreboard, like announcement, band box type
Irrigation,
stuff,
yeah.
irrigation. So I think that there might have been so much more going in
Mhm.
to their football field
Mhm.
that we might end up with less than that.
That would be great, yes.
Absolutely.
So that'll come back to us
Yeah.
in terms
Yes.
of kind of a rough estimate and a vote on school
In
choice
fact, I
funds?
will text Jeff
Okay.
right now about the samples.
And Chris, by the way, we sang your praises to the NEAS committee as well.
Oh, thank you very
In terms
much.
of, they asked us about our involvement with the budget, whether it was handed to us as a, here you go, check mark, or if we were involved in really understanding the financials behind it and helping to shape it moving forward. So we couched for them really the framing that we've gotten every year for the last couple of years in terms of from the town and how we've worked with you guys to make that happen, and talked about the tri-board process also and your involvement there in representing this in light of all of the other town needs.
Mhm.
So I thought it was insightful that they asked about that.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to school committee reports and discussions. So negotiations, we have 2 sets of negotiations coming up. Unit C, we're meeting with them this Wednesday. That is the administrative services personnel, administrative assistants. And we have October 30th, we're meeting with Unit A, that was the teachers. So lots of meetings coming up on that. Anything else on negotiations I missed? Okay, policy.
Is going to be rescheduled because we only had a few things, and then MASC sent a list of recommended revisions, which we've sent to Fred. So I just want to go on record, Heather and Keith, when I said, oh, we don't need to meet, there's only one thing. after that, we got these recommendations from MASC, so look forward to December. It'll be 6 sections, and it'll be riveting.
Okay.
Looking forward to it.
Hot chocolate. Finance Tri-Board. I know the first finance, I'm gonna forget the official title of it.
Management team.
Yes, finance management team met. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend with a family emergency, but I'm not sure. if
Yeah,
you
Kristen and
guys-
I went to it, and it was predominantly a discussion, because it came before special town meeting, there was a lot of discussion, I believe, around the firefighters, am I in the right meeting, and some of the things that were going into the FY19 budget?
There was some talk about that, a lot of talk about the free cash certification,
Yeah.
and, you know, quite honestly, not a lot of talk about school-related items, although, you know, I guess indirectly, of course, we are related to the free cash calculation, but I mean, it wasn't, you know, major discussion about the school budget or anything like that.
They talked a bit about it, I'm glad you reminded me of that, of getting those timelines, trying to clarify this sense for the voters, a real desire of the folks there to clarify this sense for the voters, when the voters feel like, why is it that we get this warrant and then we hear about a change in free cash or available cash, that can feel very confusing to people. That just happened again. It's nobody's fault, nobody's withholding anything. It has to do when balances are certified. They get certified by the state. So there was a lot of discussion about what can the town do, what can everybody do on our end to make sure that everything is tied out and finished for a fiscal year, because the state, of course, won't certify your free cash balances until you've closed out your fiscal year. Would that be accurate?
Yep.
And I'm not positive when the next tri-board meeting is. I was just looking
I don't know
for
either.
that, but it's typically, the first Wednesday of the month, so I don't know if it's the first or not.
I don't know yet either, but I'll certainly keep you guys informed. I think
Okay.
David sent you all an email.
All right. Fields.
That we talked about? Does that make sense?
Paul?
Okay. CES.
So I forwarded to you the September board report.
Mhm.
It was pretty extensive. They continue to provide really great programming for special education services, for teacher licensure, for all kinds of different things that school districts cannot afford on their own necessarily, and you can buy pieces of it. So they continue to be strong.
Great.
All good there.
Thank you for that.
And there is did I send it to you, the chart the course training that they're making available? I need to
Oh,
send
yeah,
it to you.
December.
You do have it, okay. If you, yes, it's required. Chart the course is required. It's a requirement of MASC, I think, and.
So MASC requirement within your first year of being on the school committee, but is there any kind of re-up or currency?
There's no requirement for refresher.
Just checking.
Yeah.
I'd actually gone to it and they said they would send over the certificate that it was completed to the town
Perfect.
themselves. Do we need any copies on file with the school? I mean, I have my own certificate that they gave me when I left, but it's not
No,
official with the town, I'm guessing.
no, we don't. We just keep track of fingerprints. That's it.
Are your fingerprints all over the certificate?
Yeah. If you
And-
haven't done the fingerprints, Springfield is the closest, I think, center.
Yeah, and actually, I don't think everybody has to be Corey. The reason that you have to be fingerprinted is because you have to look at my fingerprints. So
Oh.
the chair has to look at my fingerprints.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I don't know anything about the fingerprints.
No,
I did the
chair
Cory.
does.
Okay, well-
Anybody who looks at fingerprints has to be.
I was
fingerprinted.
fingerprinted. And I'll be Corey'd too, and I'll make sure.
You are an
I'm all
outstanding
current on
citizen.
that. All right, we did all 3 of our action items, and our next regular meeting should be November 27th after Turkey Day. Correct?
We can
Does
assume-
that work for everybody?
November 27th after no, sorry. I will be headed to Helsinki and then Bangor.
Okay. I'm not sure about Paul, whether that works for him. Tara and Keith, does that work for you?
I've got nothing on.
Yeah, I have nothing on that.
Humira, do you want
I
us to
think I
find
might
a
have to
different date
miss
or
it.
just,
I
okay.
think I might have to miss it. I'll be in California the week preceding,
Got it.
the 2 weeks
It's a
preceding.
range of weather you will be in.
Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
California, Helsinki.
Beach, Santa,
Yep.
hot again.
Yeah.
Well, let's plan on the 27th. I'll reach out to Paul and see if that's an issue for him, just to make sure we've got we have 3 confirmed for that date, but just in case.
And if it is an issue, I might be able to patch in.
Okay. Maybe a time difference there.
Yeah, but nothing to manage.
Okay. All right, any other business for today? Then,
Thank you.
motion to adjourn?
So,
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
7:05.
Thank you.
Not bad, you
Just
can
wanna
make
be
your
sure that there
spaghetti
wasn't
dinner.